This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, guys, let's get started. So we have the historical details in front of you. So MECM, I mean SCCM, previously we used to call it as SMS, System Management Server. It started in 1994. Then Microsoft changed the name from SMS to System Center Configuration Manager in the year 2007. Then they released SCCM 2007, 2012, 15, 11. These are the versions released in the year 2016. These versions released in the year 2017. These versions released in the year 2018. And these three versions released in the year 2019. So from 19 October, they changed the name from SCCM to MECM. So MECM, what is the full form of MECM? Can anyone tell me?
Microsoft Endpoint Configuration.
Right. So Microsoft Endpoint Configuration Manager. Okay, this is the new name of SCCM. Endpoint Configuration Manager. So these three versions, I mean these two versions released in the year 2020, last year, 2002, 2006. Now what is the latest and greatest version of SCCM? Anyone?
20.
Hmm?
2010, released in October
Right.
20.
Right. MECM 2010. This was released last year in the month of October, right? 2010. Clear? So these are the versions released by Microsoft so far. So it started from SMS from 1994, then they changed the name to SCCM, then MECM last in the year 2019. Now let me take you to the we have already discussed about this opportunities. So SCCM is evergreen in terms of opportunities. So it has around 43% of market share. People are earning somewhere around 45 US dollar per hour, and you need to apply for SCCM related opportunities in Indeed, Dice, Naukri, Monster, multiple job portals are there. Now let's discuss about sites today. We have 3 sites. Okay, start making note of it. I hope you guys have a pen and paper notebook, so start making note of these important points, guys. SCCM has 3 sites: central administration site, then primary site, and secondary site. Okay, these are the 3 sites in SCCM. Now we will talk about central, primary, and secondary in details. Okay, everyone needs to make a note of it, guys. What is a central administration site? So point number 1, central administration site, it is an optional site. Okay, optional site server. What do you mean by optional site server? That is, it is not mandatory. It is needed only on certain condition. Okay, what is the condition? When do we need central administration site? It is needed when you have more than one primary site. Clear? When you have more than one primary site. Okay, suppose you have primary site 1 and primary side 2, right? Then only you need central administration site. Maybe you have primary site 3, primary site 4, but minimum requirement is minimum 2 primary sites are there, then only central administration site is needed. And central will be sitting on the top of the hierarchy. Always it will be on the top because all primary will report to central like this. Okay. So primary central administration site is needed only when you have more than one primary site. Point number 3. If it is present, then it will be on the top of the hierarchy. So it will always be on the top. So like central on the top, then we will have primary, and then we will have secondary. Okay, you see it is always on the top. If it is there, in some companies you don't have central administration site, but in some companies you do have central administration site. Central administration site comes into the picture when you have more than one primary site. Clear, everyone? Point number 4. It supports up to 825,000 clients. Okay, that is the maximum capability of a central administration site. That means in central administration hierarchy, maximum number of client can be 825,000. Any question? Anyone? Meena, clear? Vijay?
Ashit, clear.
Yeah,
Okay. I hope you guys are making a note of it, right, everyone?
yes.
Yeah.
Point number 5, it stores data in SQL Server database. SQL Server database. Okay. Basically, central administration site is gonna store everything in its database. Okay, it needs a database. Without database, you cannot install central administration site. Okay, it has to have a database so that it can store the data. Okay, clear? Now I'm gonna delete this and I'll put point number 6 now. Okay, I hope everyone has written this. Point number 6, as I mentioned in the point number 5, that central administration site, it's gonna store the data in the database, but what all data it will store and from where the data will get collected. So basically, central administration site is collecting data from primary site. It is not collecting from its own. It is collecting data from primary site. For example, you have 2 primary sites. So both primary will have database. Okay. Just like central, primary also has a database. So the primary one, it's going to pass on the data to central database, and primary 2, it's going to pass on the data to central database. So it is collecting data from primary site. So it collects data from primary site database. Okay, clear everyone? It collects data from primary site database. Point number, I think it was point number 8. Now point number 9 is it manages primary site. Basically, we need primary sites. We need central administration site to manage primary site. Okay, it has got nothing to do with secondary site. It has got nothing to do with the client. So the client, for example, you have 10,000 clients, Windows 10 machine, right? Let's say these are Windows 10 machines. Client will never talk to central administration site. That's not possible for a client. Client means SCCM client, which is installed in every machine. If you have 10,000 machines, right? We need to install SCCM client in all those 10,000 machines. Okay. So client will never talk to central administration side. That's not possible for a client. Then secondary side will also not talk to central administration side. Okay. So that is what it manages only primary site, as you see in the picture. It only talks to primary site, nothing else. Okay. Point number 10, it does not interact. It does not talk to secondary site and SCCM client, SCCM clients. Okay, it will never communicate to the client. Okay, it will always be talking to the primary site. Okay, the primary site is basically reporting to central administration site. Primary site is like a manager of central administration site. Sorry. Central site is a manager of primary site. So central will be sitting on the top and primary will report to central. So it's like manager, central administration site. Okay, clear everyone? When do we need this? Can anyone tell me? When do we need a central administration site?
When we have more than one primary server, primary site.
Right. When do we have more than one primary site?
Um,
There are two possibilities, okay, to have more than one primary site. Possibilities, scenario number 1. When can we have more than one primary site? Scenario number 1 is when we have more than 175,000 clients. Okay, suppose if you have more, there is a company, right? Let's say HCL, for example. HCL has got somewhere around 250,000 employees all over the globe. So these 250,000 employees, they need computers. Plus HCL will have servers, right? So total, for example, HCL has got around 300,000 devices. 3 lakh. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. 300,000 devices. But one primary site can manage only up to 175,000. So this is like going above the limit. The one primary site limit is what? 175. But HCL got 300,000 devices. So we need more than one primary site. Okay, that's the first case, first scenario. The second scenario is you don't have. The second scenario is you don't have let's say there are only 50 computers, sorry, 50,000 computers, for example. There are 50,000 computers, and you already have a primary site to manage these 50,000 computers. For example, this company name is um, LinkedIn. Okay, I don't know. Okay, 50,000 computers are there, and primary site one is managing all these um, LinkedIn devices. Now this company has purchased another company. For example, let's say it purchased Yahoo. Okay, and Yahoo got 10,000 devices, right? And Yahoo already has a primary site, and this is being managed by this primary site 2, right? And the management, you see, the total number of devices is only 60,000. Total, how many devices are there? 60,000. But the management has decided to keep them separate. They don't want to mix them together. Okay, so we need a central administration site, the central, and both will report. They don't want to, uh, mix these computers in one single primary site. They want to keep them managing with two separate primary site. So LinkedIn devices will be managed by primary site 1, and Yahoo devices will be managed by primary site 2, and both will report to a central administration site. This is the second scenario. You guys clear on this? Anyone has any question? All clear? Vijay? Yes.
Kashyap, suppose, see, for example, we have 175,000 that if we are adding more, if we have devices more than 175,000, correct? Now, currently we have around 1 lakh devices. Then after 6 months, we need to create, we are getting around 1 lakh devices needs to be added. So that time we can create another primary set and
Yes.
we can create a cache.
Yes. Anytime you can add new primary site and join them together to a cache.
Yes.
That's
Okay.
possible.
Is it not something like when we do it from the scratch, we need to create a cache
No, no, no,
only?
no, no, no.
No, it's nothing.
Previously, we used to have that. Previously, we had to install a cache first. If
Okay.
your company is big enough, then we used to install a cache and then primary site. Because previously, once the architecture is done, you cannot make any difference.
Yeah.
Cannot make any changes. For example, you went only with a primary site, and tomorrow, if you have to install a cache, you cannot do it. But
Mhm.
that's not the case now. It is now scalable, and you can add primary site later on. You can add central administration site later on. That's not a problem. Okay.
Okay.
So there are these um, 10 points I have given you guys. I hope you guys have written it down. So these are the important points about central administration site. Let's talk about primary site now. Now, primary site is the main site in SCCM. Without this, that means you don't have SCCM. Primary site is the heart of SCCM. Okay, wherever you go, you will find primary site. Whether you have one primary site or more than one primary site, but primary site has to be there. You may not find a central, you may not find secondary, but primary is there. So point number 1, is this an optional or mandatory, guys?
Mandatory.
Yes, it is a mandatory site server. Okay. You have to have this. Okay. Without this, you cannot do anything. Point number 2, it stores data in SQL Server database. Okay, it stores data in SQL Server database. As I mentioned earlier, primary site also has a database. Okay, separate database. It is gonna store them, store the data in the database. Okay, clear? Point number 3. But from where it will collect the data? What will be the data source? Primary site will have to get the data from somewhere, right? So it will get the data from client computers. It collects data from client computers and secondary sites. So primary site data source. For example, you have primary site. The data source is client computer. For example, you have 10,000 or 50,000 client computers. Let's say 50,000 machines are there. So 50,000 machines, every machine will have a client. You need to install a SCCM client in each machine. You know, a small software like an agent you have to install in all the machines. The client is gonna scan the computers and send the inventory data to primary site. You know, that is the, okay, basically it sends the data through some mechanism, and not directly to primary site, but that's the data source. Okay, plus another data source is secondary site. You have secondary site, for example, secondary, there are multiple secondary sites. The secondary site is gonna send the data back to primary site. Okay, and what will they do? The data which primary site is collecting, it is gonna store them in the database. All the data will go here in the database. Any question? Anyone? Hmm? All clear? Okay. Petras, any question from your end? Bala, all good? Okay, so that is the data source for primary site, guys. Now, where do we install primary site? Okay, so mostly we go with uh, it manages, basically primary site is gonna manage, it manages secondary site, secondary sites and client computers. Okay, client computers means what? Computer means laptops, desktops, servers plus Mac computers. Okay, so it basically going to manage all those machines where SCCM client is installed. If the machine does not have SCCM client, for example, client is installed, it is be it we will be, SCCM is gonna manage this machine. But if the client is not present in this machine, SCCM will not be able to manage this machine. Okay, now point number 5 is it manages uh, it manages client computers it manages client computers which are on well-connected network. Well-connected network. Now, what do you mean by well-connected network? Well-connected network means LAN network. For example, you have one building. Let's say this is Yahoo building in Hong Kong. Let's say this is Yahoo headquarter, right? In Hong Kong. And you got some floors, right? This is a building which has got 5 floors, for example. Each floor has 10,000 devices. 10,000, 10,000, 10,000, 10,000, and then 10,000. So there are 50,000 devices in total. Now, this is Yahoo headquarter, right, in Hong Kong. Now, all these machines are connected to the LAN network. These all 10,000 and 50,000 devices all are connected to the LAN network, right? In the same office, same location, all are connected to the LAN network. That means they are on well-connected network, right? They are not connected on WAN network or on internet. They are on well-connected network, on LAN network. So we need the primary site is gonna manage all these devices which are connected on LAN network. So basically what we do, we mostly install primary site in headquarter, okay, wherein you have more devices, so that we can cover more devices through primary site. And for branch offices, we will go with secondary site. So headquarter is going to be managed by primary site. All these 50,000 devices is going to manage 50,000 devices. Primary site is going to manage all these 50,000 devices in that location because they are in LAN network. But suppose if you have another location, this is Mumbai, and Mumbai has got like another building which has got 5,000 devices. Mumbai has, suppose, total 5,000 devices. Another building in Singapore, let's say this is in Singapore, and it also has 5,000 devices. Now these two locations, Singapore and Mumbai, guys, are they on LAN network or WAN network? Can anyone tell me? This is on LAN network, but from Singapore to Hong Kong, this is Hong Kong, right? The connection between Hong Kong and Singapore and the connection between Hong Kong and Mumbai, is it LAN or WAN?
WAN.
WAN network, right? Wide area network. So basically they have taken lease line from some service provider, AT&T or Geo or whatever the service providers are there. So they are connected, these two offices, I mean these 3 offices, the Singapore office, Mumbai office, and Hong Kong office. These 3 offices are connected with WAN network, wide area network. Okay, so the connection is not that good enough. LAN is, it has a pretty fast network. It does not have any, issues. But when you have WAN network, then you need secondary site. Okay, secondary site is needed for branch offices where you have low network connection. So secondary site will be managing all the machines in Singapore. Another secondary site will be managing all the machines in Mumbai, and both will report to primary site. Both secondary site will report to primary site. Is it clear? Or any confusion, guys? Anyone? You can ask me now. Mukesh, clear? Vijay, clear?
Yeah.
So let me delete this. So it is gonna manage the devices on LAN network for branch offices which are on WAN connected network. You need a secondary site. So the architecture is like this. For example, you have one headquarter and 3 branch offices. Headquarter is in New York, and so we will install primary site here, and in branch offices we are going to install secondary site. Secondary site here, secondary site here, secondary site here. So let's say this is Mumbai, this is London, right? And this is Paris. And secondary site report to primary site. All clear, everyone?
Yeah, clear.
Now, point number 4 or 5, I don't remember the point. So it supports the primary. We're still talking about primary site, okay? It supports up to 175,000 client computers. The maximum limit of a primary site is 175,000 total. Total means from primary and secondary included. So let's say you have 50,000 computers in the location where you have primary site. Now here in secondary side you have 2,000 devices. Another secondary side you've got 5,000 devices. Another secondary side you've got 10,000 devices. Now in total, if you calculate from here, then this one, then this one, this one, that maximum should not increase to 175,000. That's the total number of devices, I mean the client, a primary site can support. Clear, everyone?
Yes.
Point number 5 is it collects. I have already discussed about it, that it is going to collect the data from secondary site and client computers. Okay, so it collects data from where? From secondary site and client computers. So primary site is going to collect data from secondary site and client computer. For example, you have client machines and secondary site. You have secondary site here. Give me 1 minute, guys. Sorry guys, I'm back. Somebody was there on my door. So it collects data from client computers. The client will send the data here, right? And secondary side. And then it is going to pass on the data to the database. Okay. That's the data source for primary side. Okay. It can be installed, and this stands for all sites, guys. It can be installed on Windows Server 2012 or greater. Okay, so you cannot install primary, secondary, or central on a Linux box or Mac computer. It has to be a Windows server, which is Windows Server 2012 or greater than that one, like 2012 R2 or 16 or 19. You cannot install it on 2008 or 2008 R2. Okay, clear, everyone?
Yes, Kashyap.
So that is a primary site, guys. So primary is the main site, mandatory site. It has a database, right? And it manages secondary sites. So secondary, and secondary. All secondary will report to primary like this. Okay. Now let's talk about secondary site. What is a secondary site and when do we need this? So point number one, is it a mandatory or optional, guys? Secondary?
Sure.
Optional.
Optional.
It is optional site. And when do we need this?
With less connectivity.
We have
Sorry?
more than 1,75,000 devices.
When we have devices in other location.
Right. That is the right answer. So when we have devices in remote location, okay, branch office, it is needed when you have devices in remote location. Like branch office, okay. So primary, it's a headquarter, and branch office, let's say multiple branch offices. So you need secondary side on those region. Why? Because they are connected on WAN network, and WAN network is not that good enough. Okay, so if 10,000 devices are communicating from London, right? London to New York, for example, this one is New York, right? 10,000 computers are located in London. So this network will be choked up. This network will be choked up, right? The WAN network will be choked up. So that's the reason what we need is we need only we need secondary side. The secondary side is gonna manage all these one, and it's gonna report to primary side like this. So it is needed when you have devices in remote location. That is the condition, guys. That's the reason it is optional. It is not mandatory. Okay. Point number 3, it collects data from client computers. So from the branch offices, basically secondary site is going to collect data from all branch offices. Okay, for example, Mumbai is a branch office, so we will have secondary site there, and secondary site is going to collect the data from Mumbai. London, we will have a secondary site in there, and it's going to collect the data from there. Okay, and one more thing you need to add here, it is needed when you have devices in remote location and the number of devices is more than 500. Let's say in the branch office you have less than 500 devices. For example, I'll show you like this. Mumbai is a branch office. Okay, it's a branch office, but the number of devices is less than 500. Let's say 200 devices are there, then you don't need secondary site. Okay, these 200 devices will directly report to primary site itself, because the number of devices is less than 500. Clear? Even though in the branch office, what I mentioned here, it is needed when you have devices in remote location, but if the number of devices is more than 500, then you need secondary site. If the number of devices is less than 500, then you don't need a secondary site. Any question in this one? So it collects data from client computers, and point number 4, it stores data in SQL Express or SQL database, SQL Server database. Now, what is the difference between SQL Server database and SQL Express? It's just a small copy of database which it will collect and pass it on to primary site database. SQL Server is a complete database which you can which is basically needed for primary site and secondary site, but sorry, primary and central. For secondary site, you can go with SQL Express as well. So as I mentioned earlier, CAS has a SQL Server database. This one, CAS will need SQL Server database. Okay. Primary side will also need a SQL Server database, the same one, this one. But secondary side has options. You can go with this one or SQL Express, but we normally go with SQL Express. So two options are there. Okay, any one of them you can choose. Mostly we use the Express edition, mostly because that is free of cost. We don't have to purchase license or something. So SQL Express will collect the data from the client machine, and it is going to pass on the data to primary site database. Primary site will pass on the data to central administration site database. All clear? Clear, Petras? Any question from your end? Vijay, clear?
Yeah, Kashyap.
Meena?
Yeah, Kashyap, clear.
So secondary site uses SQL Express most of the time, or you can also go with SQL Server database. That depends. Point number 5, it replicates the data, whatever the data it collects, right? It is gonna pass on the data to primary site database. So it replicates collected data. data to primary site database. Okay, so let's say this is secondary site, right? This is another secondary site. It is gonna collect the data in the database here, and either SQL Express or SQL Server database. Secondary site will collect the data from client computers, and finally it is gonna send the data to primary site like this. Okay, now the limit, it can support up to 15,000 devices, clients. Okay, maximum number of clients a secondary site can support is 15,000. Suppose there is a location, Mumbai, and that location has more than 15,000 devices, let's say 30,000 devices. What will you do, guys?
2 secondary sites.
Yeah, so we will have 2 secondary sites. So Mumbai has, let's say, 30,000 devices. So 15,000 devices, another 15,000 devices. So we will install 2 secondary site in Mumbai. Secondary site 1, which is going to manage these 15,000 devices. Another secondary site on the same LAN network, it's going to manage the second set of 15,000 devices. Okay. Point number 7, it can be installed on Windows Server, guys. You cannot install it on Linux boxes. Windows Server 2012 or greater. Okay, it can be installed only on Windows Server 2012 or greater. Understood? Now let's talk about the architecture diagram. Okay, now suppose you have one location, there is no branch office, only one location. Let's say you started a company called HCL and the headquarter is in Houston. This is your headquarter in Houston, and this location has got 50,000 devices. How much? 50,000. So what you need just one single primary site to manage these 50,000 devices. Only one primary site is needed, and that is called a standalone primary site. Standalone. It does not have secondary, it does not have central. Only one single primary site. So this is for a small size companies. This architecture we do for a small size company where you don't have any other primary site. I mean any other site apart from one single primary site. Okay, standalone primary site. That is Houston, right? The second one is for medium sized companies, right? This one is for headquarter and branch offices. Suppose you have a headquarter in Houston. Houston is headquarter and 50,000 devices are there. So primary site is there for managing these 50,000 devices. But what about the computers in branch offices in Seattle and Boston? For example, there are 2 branch offices, Seattle and Boston. So secondary site we needed SS1 here and SS2, secondary site 2, and both will report to primary site. Okay, this example is for medium-sized companies with this hierarchy has primary and secondary both. 99% of time you will get this kind of architecture. Wherever you go, you will have primary, secondary, primary, secondary. Almost everywhere, okay, except some companies which are small size companies or big size companies, you will not have this kind of architecture. Now the last picture is for big size organization. This is for big organization like Accenture, Deloitte, IBM, right? Wherein you have more than one primary site. So if you have more than one primary site, so the architecture will be like this: primary site 1 in Houston, primary site 2 in London, primary site 3 in Shanghai. And all these primary site will report to a CAS on the top, right? CAS. And the secondary, these secondary will report to this primary, and this secondary will report to this primary. And if you have secondary here, it is gonna report to this primary. So this is for big size organization wherein you have central plus you have primary site plus you have secondary site. All these three sites are there. Very rare kind of architecture, but some companies do have this kind of implementation too. Okay, all good, everyone? So in SCCM there are only these three kind of architecture. When we suppose you have to implement SCCM in companies, then you will do either standalone, right? Or you will do this one, primary plus secondary, or primary plus secondary plus central. Only these three kind of architecture is there in SCCM. Okay, but mostly we do this one in companies. Okay, I deployed SCCM in Godrej. Okay, so Godrej had around, you know, the Godrej, the company who makes fridge and washing machine and all.
Yeah.
So Godrej had around 250 or more than 250 locations. Okay, branch offices. And Godrej headquarters is in Mumbai, if you know, guys, in Vikhroli. So in Mumbai we put the primary site in headquarters, and we installed a secondary site in branch locations. Okay, clear? So that is how we implement SCCM in companies based on the geographical location, okay, and the number of devices. These things are taken into consideration before we install SCCM. This is another kind of another picture for big size organization like CAS on the top and two primary site, primary 1 and primary 2, right? And both these primary is going to be reporting to CAS, and these secondary will report to this primary, these secondary will report to this primary. As I mentioned earlier, the data, whatever the data secondary collects, it is going to pass on to the primary. Whatever the data primary collects, it is going to pass on the data to central database. Okay. All good, guys, everyone?
Yes.
Discussion.
So Can anyone tell me what is the limit for CAS? Number of clients a CAS can support?
25 memory sites.
25,000.
8 lakhs on
250,000.
8,25,000 devices, guys. 825,000. One price central administration site can support. One primary site can support up to 175,000 clients. One secondary site can support how much? 15,000. Looks like you guys did not make a note of it. Now,
15,000, yeah.
right. This is the limit, guys. Now, primary can be installed on which one? Linux box, right?
no.
No,
We can install on
only on
Mac
Windows
computers,
Server.
right?
No, only on Windows Server. That to 2012 greater equals to greater.
Right. So all these sites, whether you have central, right, or secondary or primary, for example, CAS and primary and secondary, you have to have Windows Server 2012 or greater. Okay, it has to be Windows Server 2012 or greater for each site, guys. What happened? Okay, so CAS needs database or SQL Server database or SQL Express, guys?
SQL Server.
SQL Server database. Primary also needs SQL Server database. And secondary?
They're
SQL
express.
Server,
Express
both
or
of
server?
them. It can take any one of them. Okay, either Express
Or SQL
or
Server.
SQL Server data. Any one of them it can take. So it is gonna collect the data and pass on to primary. Primary will pass on to central. Okay. Now primary will sit on the top of the hierarchy, right? This is the right hierarchy, right? So primary,
No.
that was wrong, guys. CAS will be sitting on the top of the hierarchy, always like this. CAS, then primary, then secondary. Okay, right. Now primary side, mostly we implement primary side where? In branch offices, right?
No.
In headquarter, right?
Yes.
And for branch offices we install CAS, right?
No.
When? Secondary, right?
Secondary
Secondary
site.
for branch office. Okay. So the architecture, for example, if you have only single location or no branch offices, then you will have primary site, and primary site will have a database, right? If you have multiple location, let's say headquarter and branch offices, then you will have secondary site and will also have a database. Another secondary site will also have a database, and the database being replicated by like this. This is the medium sized company's architecture, right? For big size or organization architecture is CAS will be sitting on the top. CAS will have a database, and you will have minimum 2 primary site minimum. It is gonna pass on the data like this, and you will have like secondary site, and secondary is gonna pass on the data. The secondary database will pass on the data to primary database, and let's say this is also having a secondary site. It has a database. It is gonna pass on here. Okay, all good. Now we have roles. These roles we will talk tomorrow. Okay, now today we discussed about sites in SCCM: central administration site, then primary site, and then secondary site. Primary is mandatory. This one is optional. This one is optional. So secondary and CAS, they are optional, but this one is mandatory, primary one. So today we discussed about these sites in SCCM. These are sites in SCCM, 3 sites: central, primary, and secondary. I hope clear, everyone.
Yes.
Yes, sure.
Okay, now I am going to create a WhatsApp group, okay, for all the enrolled students. Okay, so understood. This is my WhatsApp number, guys. Okay, I want you guys to send a hi message on this number so that I can create a WhatsApp group and add you guys. I will start giving you assignments from today. I'm gonna send you some links for you to study. Okay, send me a hi message on this number.
Yeah.
I'll create a WhatsApp group. Okay. Okay, I received WhatsApp message from Madhu. That's it. Vijay. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so send me a hi message on this number, and I'm gonna create a WhatsApp group. I'll send you the meeting, sorry, the recording. I'll create a Google Drive for you guys and upload all the videos there. So send me your email, Gmail account as well on the WhatsApp. Send me your Gmail ID as well.
Sure.
Any question, anyone, before we wrap it up? Okay, there is a question from Manikanta. How many secondary site can we install? Maximum 250 secondary site we can install, Manikanta. Okay, 250 secondary site. Okay, guys, we'll meet tomorrow. I hope the session was informative, and I'm gonna create a WhatsApp group today, and we'll send you the assignment. You have to complete those assignment, guys. Okay, everyone. Thank you, and we'll meet tomorrow. Have a nice day.
Thanks.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.